And so what I would say in the case of China, I would say to continue to show patience and fob off all these insults that are coming your way. Because if time is on your side, you can say, why don't we talk 10 years from now? You might find United States and China collaborating as they did in the Cold War against the Soviet Union. So China has clearly become much more assertive, which is what all great powers are, but it hasn't become aggressive.
喺睇片之前，大家記得分享、讚好同訂閱灼見名家，最緊要撳埋呢個鐘仔，咁你就唔會錯過我哋嘅最新影片。
You have met many Chinese top leaders. I remember that you and I both in the meetings with top leaders, including Xi Jinping and including Li Keqiang. In case that you will meet top Chinese leaders in the next meeting, Chinese leader ask you what China can improve its relations with the United States, with the EU, especially with ASEAN countries. The relations not bad, but could be even better. What's your suggestions for these three areas?
Well, I think in the case of China, I would say that China has got to calculate whether or not time is on China's side or not on China's side. If China's growth has peaked, right, as many Western scholars believe, and they may be right, you never know, you'll find out 10 years from now, then I would say it's a problem for China, right? If your power has peaked, then your influence will diminish over the next 5 to 10 years, and maybe you want to try and achieve as much as you can. But if you don't believe that China has peaked, and you believe that China can grow at even 4 to 5% over the next 10 to 15 years, then China will eventually become the number one. So if time is on your side, you can be even more patient, even more restrained. So even though others, may be making stupid, nasty statements. I mean, I give you an example. For the NATO Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, to talk about expanding NATO in Asia is absurd. What can we Asians learn from NATO which has failed to achieve peace, right? So NATO means North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Somebody should give Jens Stoltenberg a lesson in geography. This is Pacific Ocean, not Atlantic Ocean, right? He doesn't know that. I'm serious. Yeah. Jens Stoltenberg will go down as one of the stupidest men in history. Yeah. Right? So, but when he makes those kinds of provocative statements, you can either react strongly or you can ignore it. You can just say, this is just stupid. What? And so what I would say in the case of China, I would say to continue to show patience and fob off all these insults that are coming your way. Because if time is on your side, you can say, why don't we talk 10 years from now?
My question is, you mentioned in your talk that China, when Xi Jinping took over the power, had two challenges with the corruption as well as the factionism. So my question is how can you maintain kind of a democratic or healthy level of democracy within a one-party system if you eliminate the factionism entirely? Or is there any other ways to, in your opinion, to kind of build up a correction mechanism within the governance system if you eliminate the factionism?
Now, on factionalism, by the way, in any political system, right, no matter which political system you have, you will always have political rivalries, you will have different groups, right? That's normal. But it's one thing to play by the rules of the game, whatever the rules are, and it's another to break the rules of the game. And I understand that Cho Yong-kang and Bo Xilai were trying to engineer some kind of coup d'etat against the established rules, right? That's very different. So in any political system, if you break the rules, you will get penalized. What's interesting is that in some ways, you could say that on January 6th, 2021, when Donald Trump refused to accept the results of the elections, when he encouraged the coup d'etat, that was also breaking the rules. So it's important from within political systems to create rules, and you have to abide by the rules. Because when people start breaking the rules, then the political system breaks down, regardless whether it's democratic or non-democratic. Every system has got its own set of rules.
I've been reading your book, Has China Won? And in it you wrote about whether China, you had a chapter on whether if China was expansionist, and sort of came to a conclusion that though with its increased presence, it will not entirely depend on aggressive military policies. And there are Chinese scholars who also argued that this increase in assertiveness is a result of aggressive US foreign policy and, of course, domestic leadership change. With the election, with complications in the South China Sea and Taiwan and everything, are you... I have two questions. Do you still...
One, just one.
Oh, okay. Do you still agree with what you wrote in that book about China's assertiveness?
The first question is on assertiveness. And yes, I do think that the two words in the English language, aggressiveness and assertiveness, are two very different forms of behavior. So China has clearly become much more assertive, which is what all great powers are, but it hasn't become aggressive in the way that, as Graham Allison points out, in the early years when the United States became a great power, it declared war on Spain, conquered Philippines, and so on and so forth. So relatively speaking, certainly China remains assertive but not aggressive. But that's based on data, on evidence.
If let's assume that India becomes a major world power, perhaps surpasses China in 3 decades' time, will it be the US's #1 enemy? And perhaps that'll be good for China.
Now, your question, Daniel, on India, and I'm not sure I got the full thrust of it, but I have no question whatsoever that, let's say, if India becomes bigger than China, and India is about to overtake the United States, then I can guarantee you the #1 power will always push down the #2 power. And then once again, you might find United States and China collaborating as they did in the Cold War against the Soviet Union. And so, geopolitics is a very cold game. I mean, ideology doesn't matter, history doesn't matter. What matters is interests of power. But as of now, certainly, there's no question that India and the United States are getting closer to each other.
中意名家分析，記得俾 like 同埋分享，支持同訂閱卓見名家，最緊要撳埋呢個鐘仔，咁就唔會錯過我哋嘅新片。